All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the intense, tactical, and psychological prep of South Africa's national soccer team, affectionately known as Bafana Bafana, as they gear up to face host nation Mexico in the 2026 World Cup opening match. You know, whenever you have a host nation kicking off a massive tournament against a perceived underdog, the dynamics are just absolutely fascinating. But as we're going to see, South Africa is bringing this incredibly unique blend of preparation, style, and total fearlessness to the pitch that might just flip the entire script.
Right off the bat, you're probably asking the ultimate question. Will history repeat itself? Because let's be honest, everyone's mind naturally jumps straight back to that one specific, unforgettable moment, Sifiwe Tshabalala's iconic, thunderous opening goal against Mexico back in 2010. I mean, that was a moment that literally shook the globe. So heading into this monumental 2026 clash, we've got to look at how current coach Hugo Bruce and star player Teboho Mokoena are handling that massive legacy. You'd kind of think they'd be playing that 2010 highlight on an endless loop in the locker room to get hyped up, right? Well, the reality is actually the exact opposite.
And that brings us to our first real insight here. While 2010 is this beautiful, untouchable memory for the country, the current squad hasn't even discussed it, seriously. Mokoena specifically came out during the press conference and said they are not dwelling on the past. Their entire focus is locked firmly on the present. They want to create their own history now. In fact, their goal isn't just to go out and play a fun opening game, it's to achieve the totally unprecedented milestone of reaching the knockout stages. They're basically respectfully leaving all that 2010 nostalgia at the door in favor of a laser-focused 2026 mentality.
Moving into Section 1, the ultimate host advantage.
85,000. Think about that for a second. That is the staggering number South Africa is stepping into. We are talking about a wildly hostile environment packed with 85,000 passionate Mexican fans. When you're the away team playing the tournament hosts, you aren't just playing 11 guys on a field, you are playing the entire stadium. It creates this roaring, intimidating atmosphere where absolutely no one is going to be cheering for Bafana Bafana. Every single pass, every tackle, every borderline referee call is going to be met with a literal wall of sound heavily biased toward El Tri.
And if the crowd wasn't enough, there is a massive tactical threat staring them down. 10. That's the number of games in Mexico's current winning streak. So Mexico isn't just the host here. On paper, they're the absolute best team in the group. They are coming in incredibly hot. And we aren't talking about wins against lightweight teams either. We're talking about recent victories against major, world-class squads like Portugal. This is a team overflowing with confidence, momentum, and top-tier players who know exactly how to close out tight games. So yeah, South Africa is facing a statistical and tactical mountain.
But here's where Coach Bro steps in with a totally brilliant reality check to diffuse that whole intimidation factor. He said, "Those 85,000 Mexicans don't play, they are just shouting." I love that. It's the ultimate lesson in tuning out the noise. Honestly, something we could all probably use when we're facing pressure. He is actively stripping away the mystique and that fear factor of the host advantage. He's drilling it into his players that if they just focus entirely on their specific match plan, crowd noise cannot physically change the result. The fans can't tackle you, they can't take a shot, and they can't play defense. It's just a masterful piece of sports psychology from a veteran coach to keep his guys totally grounded.
All right, let's look at Section 2, Mastering the Elements. So how exactly do you prep for all of this? Well, they've deployed a really meticulous, two-pronged approach. On the tactical side, to get ready for Mexico, they deliberately went out and scheduled practice matches against Panama and Nicaragua. Why those teams? Because for the last 4 years, South Africa has played almost exclusively against other African teams. They desperately needed to adjust to that very specific, distinct Central American style of play. Then, on the physical side, they spent 10 full days acclimatizing to the punishing high altitude in Pachuca. And what's super fascinating here is that Coach Bruce actually tapped into a personal memory from 40 years ago when he played in Mexico himself. He remembered that, medically speaking, 10 days is the exact window a human body needs to adapt to that thin air, ensuring his players won't just totally run out of gas in the second half.
And we also have to talk about the exhausting logistical reality of this modern World Cup. Coach Bruce was very candid about the toll of this brand new 48-team tri-country format. It's basically a logistical marathon. If South Africa advances past the group stage, they are looking at heavy, cross-continental travel, literally jumping between massive host cities like Atlanta and Los Angeles. That is an unprecedented level of travel for a World Cup, which means physical endurance and recovery management are going to be just as crucial as whatever tactics they run on the field.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Sundown's secret weapon.
This is where the tactics get super fun. We're looking at a massive clash of styles. South Africa's analysts have heavily scouted Mexico, and they've noted that Mexico favors a very rigid, highly structured five-at-the-back defensive system. But Bafana Bafana, they counter this with something deeply embedded in their soccer DNA, the shoe shine and piano style of play. If you haven't seen it, it's this incredibly rhythmic, highly technical, and super fluid style of passing and movement. It is notoriously difficult to defend against if you aren't used to it. It's a total stark contrast to Mexico's rigid structure, and honestly, this stylistic mismatch could be exactly where South Africa finds their openings.
Plus, they've got the perfect personnel to execute this under extreme pressure, and they are backed by a very real history of pulling off massive away ground upsets. I mean, think about defeating Egypt in 2019 or knocking out a heavily favored Morocco in 2024. How are they doing this? Well, this Bafana Bafana squad leans heavily on a core group of players from the club team Mamelodi Sundowns. These guys regularly play in massive, high-stakes games in the African Champions League. They are completely battle-tested in hostile territories all across the continent. So stepping into a giant stadium against a favored opponent like Mexico, it's really not foreign to them. They've got the pedigree and the exact experience needed for giant-killing upsets on the road.
Moving to Section 4, Believing in Bafana. This is maybe my favorite part. The transformation of the Bafana mindset lately is nothing short of incredible. Just 5 years ago, Coach Bruce pointed out that this team was playing to empty stadiums back home. There was just a lot of apathy. But today, they are feeling the intense warmth and pride of an entire nation rallying behind them, even from 14,000 kilometers away. Between the die-hard traveling fans and the very vocal, very active backing of their Minister of Sport, Gayton McKenzie, team morale is at an absolute all-time high. And all this external support really fuels Mokoene's internal vow for the team. He said they are stepping onto that pitch to play with absolutely zero regrets. They're out there to embrace the magnitude of the moment and leave everything on the grass.
And this right here? This is an absolute psychological masterclass in handling pressure. 7%. Mokoene highlighted that the mathematical probabilities only give them a 7% chance of advancing out of the group. But instead of letting that demoralize them, Bafana Bafana brilliantly flips the script. To them, 7% means they have zero pressure on their shoulders. The world already expects them to lose, and by acknowledging that out loud, they take all those immense, crushing expectations and they place them squarely onto Mexico. Mexico has to win. South Africa just gets to play. It's a wildly dangerous, freeing mindset for an underdog, and honestly, a pretty brilliant way for anyone to reframe overwhelming odds.
So to wrap up this explainer, we have to look at all these pieces coming together and ask one final question. Can South Africa's meticulous physical and tactical preparation, their totally freeing zero-pressure mindset, and that deeply cultural shoe shine and piano rhythm actually overcome the ultimate host advantage on the world's biggest stage? They're walking into a roaring crowd of 85,000 and facing a top-tier opponent, but Bafana Bafana is arriving not just as happy participants, but as a battle-tested unit totally ready to disrupt the odds. It is going to be an absolutely unmissable clash. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.